Good morning. My name is James Candy. I'm the Business Development Director at Red. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for joining us on this webinar, Avoiding Channel Conflict with E-Commerce. So just to give you a little bit of an insight into what we're going to cover today, there'll be a short introduction to Red, just so you understand who we are. And then really like to look at the benefits of trading direct online. Now, most of you will probably have e-commerce within your sales strategy, but my suspicion is that some of you won't necessarily be utilizing all of the e-commerce channels. So really it's just to kind of recap on it. Now, some of these you'll know, some of them might be new, but it's certainly well worth looking at. Then we're going to look at what is channel conflict. So really this is to try and understand what channel conflict is, and we've got a sort of short statement that distinctly puts it all together. And then really look at how and where, when you introduce e-commerce, where it can create conflict. Now, we'll obviously from the benefit side have seen the real advantages of e-commerce, but really it's try to understand where the conflict occurs so you can mitigate these to take advantage and gain all the advantages, I should say, but really mitigate the conflict. Now, really there's kind of two key areas that conflict occurs. One is internal, so how do organizations manage that and mitigate that? And that for a lot of companies is pretty easy in some ways because you've got control over your organization and the people within it. External conflict is where the real challenge comes because you're dealing with external partners, some people who buy off you, they're external companies. So therefore your control and ability to influence them becomes a lot harder. So with both of these, we're going to really look at some of the strategies being deployed and also look at some real life examples that we've helped our customers achieve. And then really we'll just have a sort of short conclusion to bring it all together for you. So who is Red Technology? We're an e-commerce agency. We've won a number of awards for projects we've delivered. Our platform's also won awards. And really what we look to do is deliver world-class solutions for our merchants. And these will cross a number of different channels, whether this is retail, business to business, or looking at the international sector as well. And all of this is designed around our platform Trade It, which provides all the sophisticated tools to try and manage your online world, but also to harmonize within your internal systems and your wider real estate. So just as a kind of feel of who we work with, so we deal with a lot of UK and Ireland's largest retailers, manufacturers, distributors and wholesalers. Fairly well-known names within that, so people like GSK, Games Workshop, Morphy Richards be fairly well-known. But there's also some other organisations that we help to deal with, so people like West Coast. They're actually a very large organisation, the largest IT distributor in the UK. However, they're not necessarily known unless you're in that particular space. And we deal with all the way through to small organisations like Garden Trading, who predominantly sell direct and also into small shops selling sort of homeware, gardening products, that side of things. What is key to all of these organizations is e-commerce is very much part of their strategic mix and something they're very serious about in terms of being able to drive sale within the organization. So what are the benefits of trading direct online? This one, I guess everyone will know, the growth of online sales channels is pretty big. It's in the news a lot. It's really, normally, I think the ratio going through is about 4 times the growth you're getting through an e-commerce channel than you would with your traditional routes to market. Other sort of benefits is really to make sure that the end user understands fully about your product range. So for those who don't necessarily sell direct, some of you may, but for those that don't traditionally sell through the channel, how do they make sure that the end user actually knows that there's this wider product range? Because when they walk into the local store, they may only see a subset of it. So this is trying to make sure that your products are available, and obviously we all know the sheer cost of catalogues and printing of those, or e-commerce can be a different route to providing that information. Now, this is a fairly key challenge for every organization, doesn't really matter who they are, but anyone who's buying products or services, how does the company actually own and influence them? Now, when you're selling direct, you have a little bit more of a direct relationship. If you're selling through the channel, it's a lot more difficult because you're removed from that relationship. So quite often this means that companies have to spend a lot of money on marketing, and they also therefore still do not have the end user control because actually it's still the touch point of where that user buys from. So having an e-commerce channel that reaches out can help mitigate that. And then a fairly key one is really to try and understand if you're dealing with your customers direct, if you're understanding what they're saying, how they're thinking, how they're using your products, this is going to give you great insight. And for one of our customers, this has been really, really powerful and really helped with product development to make sure that they're delivering products that are fit for their customers rather than getting feedback sort of secondhand through their trade partners. Now, e-commerce obviously allows you to access a far greater audience than the traditional methods may mean, but quite often organizations are looking just within their kind of core initial markets, so maybe within the UK, etc. But by looking at the different channels that can suddenly open up with e-commerce, this can open up new sales channels, new customers, and we're very much a global world now. And so really e-commerce can allow you to get there at a fraction of the cost of traditional routes. And then fairly key, if you are a manufacturer of those products, you are the expert. So how do we actually make sure that the right information's gone through? Now, you would have heard it fairly mentioned a lot around the internet, but content really is king. So what is it that needs to go with those products to help the sale of them, help the use of them? And that additional information to help people with the buying process. Actually, the manufacturer sometimes is the person who is best knowledgeable, or if they are the key seller of those products. Now, as with everything, we all love to reduce our competitive competition in any way we can. Now, obviously selling direct, you've got the sort of conflict with other companies selling similar products. If you're selling through the trade, the key issue you've got is, let's take art supplies as an example. You may sell a number of different products for a number of different brands. Now, for that brand, how do they make sure that the user comes in and asks for that product, not over another? Whereas the retailer may wish to actually sell different products. So it's trying to find ways to reduce that competition for the brand, or also reduce the competition where you're looking to compete with other like-minded organizations who sell similar products. And then with e-commerce, it's been proven to be a lot more cost-effective than traditional routes to market. It can bring in high levels of efficiency. So quite often the lower costs and increased profits can come about. Obviously, if you're selling direct, for example, and you weren't previously, you've obviously got that margin to retain that you'd normally pass on to the trade. And then one we all know about anyway, but people buy all the time, so the ability to sell, if you're not selling online already, the ability to sell 24/7 is pretty formidable. And then really a lot of kind of effort goes into driving the sale of your products and everything else. So it's really trying to sort of say, well, how can you take better advantage of that? So how can you actually get people to buy more of your products rather than necessarily reliant on just the few items that may be stocked somewhere? How do you make sure that when people come in to your shop, to your e-commerce site, that they actually buy a lot more products on that visit? So this is where e-commerce can come in and help. And finally, the key one is users are fairly agnostic these days. They want to buy wherever they want to buy. They want to buy how they want and what they want. So really it's trying to be able to say, how do I actually match up the product with the customers, make it really easy for them to buy, be able to use all of that information we learned earlier about them to make sure that they're buying my product rather than someone else's. So obviously we've got all the benefits, but really what we're looking at here is that, with the introduction of e-commerce, and some of you who have already got e-commerce will find you're still in conflict anyway, what is this? How do we define it? So we tend to look at it in one particular way, which is channel conflict occurs when a company's different routes to market converge at the same endpoint, and often this can be in direct competition with each other. So I've put a a little sort of diagram together to kind of explain how how this kind of occurs with an organization when they launch it. So if we just take a company, for this example, we've just used a sort of manufacturer. What we have here is maybe their particular route to market. So they've got sales teams, they may be a sort of catalog business, and they may have their own stores dotted around the country. And that all feeds into the end user. Alternatively, or they may do this as well, you've also got the route through the trade. So they've got sales teams and catalog which are feeding into wholesalers, distributors, who may also feed the third-party stores, or they may go direct and bypass the wholesaler. And again, that's feeding into the end user. So from the end user point of view, we've now suddenly got lots of different channels that they can buy from. If we then, over the top of that, launch a B2C website, so this is a retail website where you're going direct, the conflict can occur really in both places. So it can occur internally. So this is over on the left-hand side. So you're now in conflict potentially with your sales teams, your catalog, and own branded stores. Or alternatively, you're going to be in direct competition with your trade route. Now, the second one is where it gets a lot more complex. Generally, what you're going to do is get potentially a lot of backlash from the trade if they suddenly find out you're going direct, because they fear that you're going to cut them out, for example, of their particular market, and that's one that becomes the most complex to manage. So we'll have a little look at that side in a little bit. Obviously, with B2B e-commerce, when you start to sell directly into the wholesalers, well, they can be in competition really with your sales team in your catalog. Or alternatively, if you bypass the distributor and go to directly third-party stores, you're also going to be now in competition with your wholesalers. And it's this competitive nature that we need to manage very, very carefully. So if we look at the internal side initially, so how do we avoid this internal conflict? So just as a recap, that retail and B2B e-commerce being pushed in, these are the different areas that it's going to come into conflict on. So what are the challenges that tend to come up with internal? So the first one that tends to get cited is fear. So for example, what does this mean to the sales guys if it's going to have an e-commerce app? Am I going to be losing my job? Are we going to have people who are no longer motivated because they're living in fear? How do I manage price degradation? So one of the biggest challenges for one of our companies was the fact that they started to find that the sales guys, in order to retain the sale, were starting to undercut the website. And therefore, they're causing price degradation within their own channel, which is something no organization should allow. All you're doing is driving the price down, profit down. Obviously, that leads back into, who gets the sale. So if the salesman owns that customer and the sale goes back, and it's done through online, who gets it? And that again goes back to how do you manage salespeople? How do you incentivize them from it? Obviously, the cost of a sale via an e-commerce platform is cheaper than a salesperson having to man the phones, deal with the order. So that all needs to be looked at. We also can potentially get channel confusion. So who is the customer dealing with, the salesperson or dealing with the website? And also with that, when you start to get confusion, you start to get price degradation, things like that, brand value can erode because of that confusion. So really we want to be coordinated and looking like we're one team and not split. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, employee disengagement can come in pretty quick if they see this as threatened and they're not properly spoken to and sort of explained about the sort of benefits really rather than the negative. And we have seen instances, some of our customers where because of the competing nature, they've actually lost sales. So all of these sort of challenges need to be understood, understand which ones affect that organization and how they're mitigated. So what are the options to mitigate this sort of internal conflict? So we look at direct to consumer. So one of the key things is employee buy-in. So let me give you an example. We'll take a retailer. They've got launched an e-commerce website. They've got shops. All of the shop managers are now no longer promoting the shop. They're trying to make sure that they retain the sale because they won't get the benefits of it. So that kind of conflict is not good for the organization. What it should be is about the sale of the product. Doesn't matter the channel it comes in. So really it's about trying to work with each of the store managers to try and understand the benefits. Introducing things like click and collect to drive footfall to the stores rather than paid for online and they just pick it up is fairly key. So it allows the store to retain that order or even be credited with it to help with their sales figures. Additionally to that, it provides a huge opportunity for the salespeople to, the store managers and the sales agents to really help upsell, so try and increase the average order value. But the key to doing this is actually explaining to them that you're driving footfall into the shop rather than necessarily taking it away. Obviously, key is to look at how you incentivize them, so who gets the kind of records for this side of things. And if you look at most organizations, traditionally, when they launched e-commerce, the e-commerce team are under their own targets to achieve X, Y, and Z, and the stores are on their own different one as well. And therefore, you've got your conflict rather than looking at it as though they're all to help the end sale. So it needs to be looked at a slightly different structure, slightly different reward scheme. And a fairly key one really is that we've done for one particular customer is something we call endless aisle. So I walk into a shop, I want to buy a particular product. Unfortunately, that one's out of stock today, or it might be a small shop that doesn't hold the full range. Not a problem. They just key on an iPad, use the website to deliver that item directly to the customer. And that sale can go through the point of sale in the shop and be recorded as a sale for that shop, rather than the customer walks out the door. So it's about trying to bring the ecosystem together. If we look at business to business, fairly key to try to explain to the sales guys that this is to try and help them. Obviously, you don't want all your sales guys walking out while the e-commerce bed's in. And so really it's looking at saying, if they do place the order through the e-commerce, great, you'll still get it against your target. However, you guys should be out there, instead of just being order takers, you should be out there trying to get new business. And also to try and explain that it takes away that kind of real administrative bit that takes away their time of selling. So filling in orders, dealing with orders, letting them know things are being dispatched. Additionally to that, we provide quite a lot of tools that, because e-commerce holds a lot of information, the sales guys at any particular time can go in and have a look at the customer's account, what they're looking at, look at things like invoices, orders, everything else. And they can do that literally the minute before they walk in on site. So really, really powerful to try and explain that this is a tool to help rather than to be in conflict. So let's have a look at some of the sort of examples that we've been deployed. So F. Hines, for example, they've got about 100 stores in the UK. So they deployed click and collect in stores, and they've had a phenomenal success with this, both in terms of the number of orders in stores. They've also had the average order value going up quite a lot. And this is about driving footfall into the stores, because actually most of their stock is out on the stores, not held in warehouses. And so this facility can also allow the hookup between different stores, so allow the movement of stock between different stores and also the central warehouse where required. Also the ability for the endless aisle items, so like I mentioned earlier, if the user comes in, don't lose the sale, still get the web to deliver it or an alternate store. And this can all be placed via the e-commerce platform. Other ways to deal with this, and what we have been doing is with the B2B side has been launching really business portals. So these are very powerful 24/7 self-service. And one of the key things is that, and this looks like channel conflict, is I could go online and see the orders I placed online, but not my offline orders. I can't see my quotes. So it's about coordinating that. So with some organizations, the quotes are actually generated by the sales guys. They're provided online, and the user can therefore see them and buy them, and it's all in one place. And this allows the sales guys to have visibility. If he's out and about, he can get that place while he's not in the office. But additionally, we can do follow-ups that says, it's 5 days of running out from its 30-day price held, and remind the customer. It's almost helping the sales guy in case he's forgotten to follow it up. Additionally to that, one of the biggest challenges on the B2B side with sales conflict is that the fact that sales guys like to have a little bit of fluidity about how much they price things for in order to get the deal. And the problem with e-commerce is, it sets the price and that's the price you pay. So one of the things we've done for a number of organizations is allow sales staff to overwrite the price. And therefore, if they log in, they can actually change the price if they need be. Now, they could be on site with a customer. It could be done over the phone. So it's still allowing that sort of ability for the guy to move on price if he needs to get the deal without everything being sort of fairly rigid. So again, it brings both worlds together nicely. So if we look at external conflicts, and this one is a lot more complex to dealing with. So here we've got the B2B launch coming in, and the very first sort of conflict you can get is that if you're going to bypass the distributor and go to the third party stores, then you're going to get the conflict from the trade. And you also get that from the B2C side as well. So if you're launching direct, everyone gets very nervous that you're just going to bypass them on that side. So what are sort of the challenges that come through? The biggest one tends to be kickback from the trade. If you announce that you are launching an e-commerce that's going to take out one of your trade sections, or on the B2C, the retail side, take out all of them, then generally there's going to be a lot of disquiet. Now, if you're an organization that relies heavily on that trade and this is new, you're going to have to tread very, very carefully, because what you don't want is all of those channels to suddenly shut up shop because your business will be in trouble. So how do we actually manage it? How do we actually get the end users, or your end customers rather than the end user, actually see the benefits of what you're trying to do and to understand it? Obviously, some of the key things is how you can try and sort of promote, is to try and compete with that competitors. So one of the things we noticed with launching some of the B2B systems is that if you were selling into a particular customer and they find out that you're bypassing them or you're going direct, they'll start to promote the competitor who isn't. So how do we mitigate that? Because obviously we don't want to lose those particular sales. Alternatively, if they stop buying altogether. And again, this is partly a PR exercise and making them understand, but also there are a number of tools that can really help to bring them on board. It's not just about talking to them on that side. So what are these particular options open if you're going to be launching a particular site direct? So if we're taking a direct site, we only sell at RRP, so therefore all of your trade partners can still undercut you. And the key behind that is you're just saying, look, I'm just trying to make it easy for my customers to buy the full range because you don't stock anything, but I'm not in a price competition with you. One of the things that a number of our customers do is actually allow their end merchants to drop ship. So exactly if we go back to that endless aisle example, a bit like retail, I walk into a trade store, I want to buy a particular item from a particular manufacturer, he doesn't stock it, well, he's still got access to the full catalogue. There can be a little toggle that will allow the price to be RRP, they can go through it, the catalogue with the user sat there, and they can order the items, have them sent direct. And the customer will pay the trade partner, and they will still buy at their own rate. So effectively, they've gone from having a small level of stock to actually having access to the full range without having to hold it or invest money in it. Other areas is about promoting retailers. So it's about trying to say, well, actually, I'm not going to dictate how you buy your product or where you buy them, if you like. What I'm going to say is that if you want to buy them from me, that's fine. It's RRP. However, we do have a number of partners where you can also source your products. You may need advice, help with that. So it's about saying, can I find these particular partners? Where are they? So store locators, that type of thing. And then something that's starting to grow quite considerably, a bit like the drop ship for the customers, is click and collect from stores. And we've got a number of customers now starting to do this, where they're actually allowing or using their trade partners' real estates, all their stores, etc., to actually pick up items. Now, the advantage of this is that they're driving footfall into those stores, so the ability to upsell, but they also come to agreement on the kickback on some of the value of that product. So again, it's about making it easy for the user. Well, I want to be able to pick it up, want to be able to go there, I need a bit of advice. Not a problem. We'll make sure the product's there waiting for you the next day, and they'll be there to do it. Other areas that can really help is to try and sort of make sure that it's to the user one channel, even though they're different companies. So it's looking about how you actually sort of promote what's going on within the trade, maybe demonstration days, events, things like that, or combine joined up offers. Again, what you're seeing here is a lot more buy-in and a lot more reasons why that particular end organization won't necessarily be so concerned about you launching e-commerce to suddenly an e-commerce site appearing. It's about being joined up. And then one of the things that a number of our customers do is that they'll have a wider stock range that isn't held within their kind of retail or trade partners, and they'll very much make these sold online. So again, it could be things like spares available to the end customers, so they're not really competing on the core stock held by their trade. Other things that can be done, if there really is still a lot of conflict and a lot of kickback, is to look at smaller steps to get there, so therefore the threat isn't so big. So it's things like catalog only, it's doing things like product registration. So even though I may not be selling online, if you register the products, I can still get information on the end user, which is hugely important to my R&D, to my marketing strategies, that type of things. And then again, like we say, you've got the peripheral sales. So if we have a look at some of the examples, so this is Winsor Newton. So they very much wanted a site where users could go, who are effectively their artists. They can get a lot of information about, articles, tips, videos. They can interact with each other, but also be able to view the full catalogue. But why not make it easy for them to buy if they wanted to be? But they very much said it at RRP. They weren't looking to effectively compete. What they're actually looking to do is just facilitate the user. If they're on the site and they really want to buy at RRP, then let them. We've also got example of a mixed range. So Bowers & Wilkins, they're the speaker maker. We do a number of their international sites. So they have a lower level set of products that they'll sell direct. So these are things like headphones. However, their big end speakers are only sold through specialist retailers. Essentially, these products are restricted because quite often they need install on that side of things. So therefore, they don't really get any conflict. But if someone really wants a headphone or some controls or things like that for their units, then you might as well just do it online. The retailers aren't necessarily going to want to pick up thereafter the big install and the sell of the big speakers. Morphy Richards, they will sell direct to RRP, but obviously their products can be found a lot cheaper across a number of different channels, whether it happens to be Amazon and through lots of different sort of electrical stores. So what they try to do is provide the spares, because the retailers aren't going to hold it. So if something breaks, I really can go and get my spare and make it easy for me. But they also use registration to try and gain a lot of insight and direct communication, so they can then talk to their customers. May not be necessarily selling them the initial end product, but they gain a lot of information. They also can then influence them and make sure that they become brand advocates. One of the other things that can be done, that if a particular territory is just going to cause too much trouble with trade if you launch a particular site, is to look at international markets. Traditionally, the launching in a new country was hugely costly. You needed premises on the ground, etc., etc. With e-commerce, you can launch these in e-commerce channel internationally and everything else for a fraction of the price. You can still distribute from the UK initially until you get to certain levels where it makes sense to put in a warehouse in that country. And so you can test new markets without having to put a lot of risk on the business. And if they grow, well, it's fairly easy to then underpin them pretty rapidly. And this allows organizations to toe dip and get into markets where there is no conflict. They're just a new entrant, if you like. Here's an example of Mwina. We do a number of international retail and B2B sites for them. And so one of the key things for them was to make sure that their retail shops from their partners was very much included. So how can I find one? Where can I go and get advice because of the types of products they set? And they'll absolutely click and collect to that particular store for you. So therefore, when you go there that not only can you get the advice, but they'll have your product in your size. And then obviously Bowers & Wilkins also do the registration of products. And I think that only of the end customer, if you're not direct, is hugely, hugely important because it opens up that communication flow in order to have that one-to-one relationship. So one of the things that, just before I go on to conclusion, one of the things that we know from Winsor Newton is that what came out of this, e-commerce systems hold a lot of information. They can gain a lot of information on customers, and some of this can be quite hard to find through other methods. So with Winsor Newton, the information they got back on their particular artists, what they liked, what they're actually doing with their products and everything else has been hugely influencing in order to change some of the development they're doing with their product. So it's actually had a direct influence in changes in terms of the types of products they're delivering, but also changes within each of those ones. That was something they'd always struggled previously because they traditionally always went through the trade, so they were slightly one removed. So even with all of that side, having that end-to-end touch, however you do it, is hugely important. So just a sort of conclusion, obviously most of you guys will already be trading online, but don't be put off by launching e-commerce because of conflicts in other areas that may be new channels. it's about understanding what the conflict you're going to have. So you're then best placed to look at the tools to mitigate that. Really what you need to do is kind of look at models that are going to cause the least disruption. So how do we necessarily go in slowly? Certainly if there's a lot of value in that particular channel, but also it's not necessarily about trying to cut out your retail partners if you sell through trade. It's about actually saying, how do we all work together for the benefit of all? So that's not just the retail partners and the manufacturer, but also at the heart of it, the consumer, because ultimately without them, both sets will be affected. And then really, it's about looking at kind of the levels of resistance you get. So by understanding each of the different areas, you can then look at mitigating from it. So how big are they? Where are the complexities? And this will vary according to the organizations, their routes to market. Where most people have made mistakes, and there are quite a few well-known ones out there, is where they've just never understood the conflicts, never really done the in-depth research. Or if they have, they've never deployed policies to try and mitigate it. So, and then at the heart of it, the communication is key. If you go about doing all these strategies and launch your new e-commerce website into a channel that has conflict, and then you don't tell anyone, then you're going to find that conflict still remains. But I do hope that's been useful for you to understand on that side. If you'd like any more information regarding this webinar or any more information about Red Technology, please do let us know. You can easily find us on our website, redtechnology.com. All our contact details are on there. But I do hope you've enjoyed it, and many thanks for your time.